You're listening to Puma Podcast.
In Russia also people so scared, but thing is, if you live in Russia you cannot say anything because government gonna put you in jail for 10 years. If you, in Russia even you cannot call that war. For now we're sitting down here and we say clearly that it's war, right? In Russia you cannot say that it's war. You have to say special operation. Yes.
And you cannot post anything in Instagram about politics, about war, and then even not only in social media, even with friends, you cannot say like that.
Russians around the world have watched from afar as their country carries out a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Pero teka, let's pass the mic. Two Russians living in the Philippines tell me what it's been like. I'm Bella Perez Rubio. It's risky for Russians, even when they live in the Philippines, to talk about the war in Ukraine. That's why we're keeping their names confidential and assigning them aliases instead. First, let's meet someone we'll call Sofia.
I'm from Russia and I'm living here in the Philippines for 4 years already.
And another we'll call Tanya.
I live in Philippines 6 years almost.
Tanya was visiting family in Russia last year when President Vladimir Putin launched an unprovoked attack on Ukraine.
Звони маме, говори, чтобы метро шла.
Разбили, разграбили. I'm of course scared if cancel flight because this, everything's crazy happen. But in Russia, everything is clear this time. Nothing happened because war is in Ukraine, not in Russia.
There's a reason this war is called a quote-unquote full-scale invasion. It's because the conflict goes as far back as 2014, when Russia occupied Crimea.
Because this is war is not new. This already how many years? Just recently, maybe 7 years ago, also have war. This is like this always Ukraine and Russia always fighting. So this is I find just like normal, but this is happen a real big war this time.
And while Tanya was in Russia, Sofia was in the Philippines.
I just read it on Facebook or Instagram, somewhere there. I was so shocked.
It's still hard for both of them to believe that this war is even happening.
I do have friends in Ukraine. When I live in Russia, I had partners in Ukraine, and we still communicate even now. And they send me a lot of videos of scary mornings, like that it's like from horror movie. There is a loud sound on the street, and you wake up at 5 a.m. from that sound, and you can hear this bump in the morning. It's so scary, really. People so scared in Ukraine and in Russia also. When I talk to Filipinos and I try to explain what's going on in our countries, I always say, can you imagine there is war between Cebu and Manila? Mm-hmm. And these cities became different countries. Can you imagine what will happen? Your mother live in Cebu, you live in Manila, you're going to fight with your mother?
And for some, that nightmare has become a reality.
Someone told me about a person who lived in Russia, but basically he's Ukrainian. He moved to Russia so many years ago, but all his family in Ukraine, his sisters, brothers, mother, father, and all friends in Ukraine, but he lived in Russia, right? But for now, he have to go to war. He's fighting on Russian side, meaning fighting with his family. Can you imagine that? Russians who live in the Philippines for a really long time, emotionally and physically, we're so far from war and from these feelings. We don't even really know what's going on in Russia. We know everything only from internet, social media. If you ask the same questions to people who live in Russia right now or to people who live in Ukraine right now, I'm sure they're gonna give more aggressive answers.
Sometimes in Instagram, I post how we hung out with Ukrainian, our friends, and then I put flag like Russian and Ukrainians together, and then I get a lot hates from Russians. My friends say like, "This is our как будет враги? Enemy. This is our enemy. You should be far from them," like that.
And same thing, we have also Ukrainian friends in the Philippines. Also, some of them they feel guilty to post hanging out with the Russians.
Them even don't post.
Because of their Ukrainian family in Ukraine. They don't know how to explain this thing, you know.
More from Sophia and Tanya after a quick break. Back in Russia, life has changed drastically.
Every man in Russia have to go to army, right? If you're not going to army, you cannot go to college, or you cannot get married or anything like that. If you get paper, if they call you to go to war, you go to war, or else they put you in jail for 10 years.
That's why a lot of Russians run away. A lot Russians arrive new in Philippines because of mobilization.
But legislation signed by Putin this week makes it even harder for Russians to dodge conscription. Draft papers can now be served online, and conscripts are automatically banned from leaving the country.
Единый центр приема обращения по сдаче в плен, я вас слышу.
Здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте.
Мне вот номер дали, там говорят.
Russian soldiers who desert their posts or voluntarily surrender to Ukrainian forces also face up to 10 years in prison. According to Ukraine, nearly 10,000 Russian soldiers have contacted its surrender hotline as of March this year. The actual number of surrenderees is unclear. And then there's the disinformation about the war. The news Sophia and Tanya get is worlds apart from what their friends and family back home have access to. Media was already restricted before the invasion started, but the censorship and propaganda have only grown worse since then.
It's big difference because so in Russia, in Russian TV, they say we protect our country. They say we protect Ukraine also. And a lot of Russians who live in Russia now, they actually think that war, it's not that bad thing. They think that Russian government really protect Ukrainians and Russians. That's why they do that. They think like that because Russian TV and the radio and everything, magazines and everything, they say this way. Ukrainians not waiting for Russians, of course, on their land. Russians not welcome there.
Tanya stays in touch with friends back home, and some of them have been to the front lines of war and back.
Few days ago, 2 of my friends from Russia come back from war. From 1,000 people, only 100 people come back. And then this, like, all days we talk with them, and then I feel so bad for them because them also cannot say a lot about war because it's a secret. But what them say, maybe 5%, I'm already shocked from this information, what's happened there.
Tanya told me these friends were deployed by Wagner, a private Russian army whose numbers have grown tenfold since the invasion. It's not clear if Tanya's friends volunteered or were forced to join. According to the US, nearly 80% of the 50,000 Wagner troops in Ukraine were taken from Russian prisons.
My friends, so we talk from telephone. My questions is, what you feel about Ukrainians? Do you hate them? Or this is guys same like you? Them say, this is guys like same like us who don't have other way. I try to understand what's happened in war, but them of course cannot say everything. So I just ask, where you live? What's your regime from morning? What you start doing? Them say, I'm super surprised from here.
Tanya's friends said they lived in trenches, almost like it was World War I all over again.
Like
super big, 3 meters or 5. Then
Yeah.
put like leaves, put sticks, and then live there under 6
no
months.
shower, no bath, no just wet wipes only, and they're so thankful even for wet wipes.
Them say never change clothes, so them use this clothes until this is really broken. And I ask what them eat. Them say someone bring always food like canned food, but them so tired eat this canned food every day. And of course, because you
Same
have
food every day.
high physical intensive work, you need to eat a lot. Them feel not enough food, so them get sometimes where building is broken already, nobody live there, and them sometimes find their spaghetti or some sauce, and then them get, but not from other people.
I asked both Sophia and Tanya if they had plans to go home.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, we would like to go to visit our parents and to eat Russian food.
And I miss snow. I want to see snow.
But living in Russia, they said, isn't an option.
We have friends who moved to the Philippines from Russia, and then in few months they decide to go back to Russia because they find it out too difficult here, something like that. For some reason, they decide to move back to Russia, but they stayed there for maybe for 3 months, and then they said it's so difficult in Russia because it's so stressful. Everybody's stressed out about war. But thing is, there is no war in Russia, right? In Russia, it's safe. But thing is, people all the time talk about it, and they scared of new rules from government, or they scared of to go to war, or they don't know what will happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with these final words from Sophia.
When I talk to some of my Filipino friends, wrong thing that they say, wow, Russians run away from war, but you have to be patriot for your country, you have to be strong like that. But thing is, you don't have to be patriot this way when you have to kill your brothers or they might kill you. You know, for me, my opinion is, if I'm on that place, I will run away also. I really think that's the way to love your country, to love yourself, to love your parents and everybody. Peace. We need to live in peace, right?
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Bella Perez Rubio. This episode was edited by Pedoy Blanco. As Ukraine marks a year since Russia's invasion, what can the Philippines do to help? Find out by searching for our previous episode with that same title on your podcast app or on YouTube. Maraming salamat po.